He was broke, spiritually dry, lost in a storm of doubt. With only $20 left in his bank account, Jonathan Roumie didn't know what else to do, so he dropped to his knees. No camera, no audience, just a quiet moment of surrender. The words he whispered in that silence, they changed everything. This isn't a story about acting. It's not about fame or success. It's about a real man, a quiet prayer, and what can happen when you finally let go. The prayer, Jonathan said, in that moment is simple, but powerful. And if you say it with your heart, it might just transform your life to asterisk. Before the world saw Jonathan Roumie playing Jesus in The Chosen, before the awards, the interviews, and the admiration, there was a man living in a small apartment, unsure how he was going to pay rent. His fridge was nearly empty. He hadn't booked a role in months. The kind of silence that settles in after too many rejections was starting to echo in his mind. Every morning, he would wake up and stare at the ceiling, wondering how much longer he could keep chasing this dream. He had faith, yes. But even faith can feel heavy when life keeps telling you no. He tells the story not with drama, but with honesty. He didn't know what to do. His acting career was going nowhere. He'd worked hard, done his part, but the doors weren't opening. People talk about rock bottom like it's a dramatic crash, but sometimes it's quieter than that. It's the long ache in your chest, the endless waiting, the slow loss of hope. And that's where Jonathan found himself. With $20 in his account and no clear way out, he hit a wall. And that's when something inside him broke. Not in a bad way, but in a freeing way. He stopped trying to control it, stopped trying to figure it all out. He got on his knees, looked up, and spoke. There was no fancy prayer, no rehearsed words. It was real, it was desperate. And it was the first honest thing he had said in a long time. The words didn't come from his head, they came from his heart. He said, "God, I can't do this. I've done everything I know how to do. I'm tired. I surrender. Please take over. Help me." That moment wasn't filmed. There's no photo of it. But that moment, he says, is when everything changed. This isn't just Jonathan's story. This is the story of so many people who reach a place where they can't hold it all together anymore. Where pretending doesn't work, where pushing through isn't enough. It's a kind of moment where you realize strength isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about letting go, about giving up control, about trusting something bigger than yourself. And in that small apartment, with empty hands and a tired soul, that's exactly what Jonathan did. He let go. And in letting go, he found peace. He didn't know what would happen next, but in that quiet surrender, something deep shifted. He stopped carrying the weight alone. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe again. Asterisk it. Didn't start with "Dear God." There was no choir in the background, no flickering candles, no beautiful words, just a man on his knees in a dim apartment, whispering from the wreckage of his life. Jonathan Roumie didn't recite a prayer he'd memorized. He didn't reach for something poetic. He wasn't trying to sound holy or faithful, because in that moment, he didn't feel holy. He didn't feel strong. He felt done. Tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Worn out from trying to be everything to everyone. And that's exactly where the real prayer began. Not in perfection, but in the middle of his mess. He didn't pray like an actor. Didn't pray like a man who played Jesus. He prayed like a man who had run out of options, who had tried his best, who had hit a wall. And what came out of him was raw, honest, real. He simply said, "God, I can't do this anymore. If you want me to keep going, you have to take over. I surrender. Not just my career, not just my money. I surrender my fear, my pride, my plans. Done trying to control it. I'm done pretending I'm okay. I give it to you now." All of it, and there was silence. No voice from heaven, no lightning bolt. But Jonathan felt something like a dam breaking. It's like a weight being lifted. It's like the walls he'd built were finally falling down. It wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional, it was peaceful. Almost still, but that stillness held power. It held truth. And something in his spirit whispered, "This is what surrender feels like. This wasn't the first time he'd prayed, but it was the first time he let go. Fully, not halfway. Not with backup plans, not with expectations. It was full surrender, and that's what made it different. So many of us pray and still hold on. We say we trust, but we keep steering the wheel. Jonathan didn't. That day, he took his hands off the wheel completely, and that changed everything. Says it didn't happen instantly. It wasn't a knock on the door the next day with a miracle. But something inside him shifted. The pressure eased. The fear started to fade. The silence felt less like abandonment and more like space. For something new to begin, this prayer wasn't a magic spell. It was a moment of release, a spiritual exhale, a surrender so deep it stripped him down to nothing and then began to build something new. Not just hope, but trust. A different kind of strength, a peace that didn't depend on circumstances, and that prayer, the one he whispered when no one was watching, is the same one he shares now with anyone who feels like they've run out of options. Because you don't need the right words. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. You just need to stop holding on so tight. That's when things begin to change. Nothing around him looked different the next morning. The rent hadn't paid itself. The phone didn't magically ring. But something inside Jonathan Roumie had changed. That change was louder than any miracle. It started quietly. Like a sense of stillness where there used to be noise. A steady calm in his chest where anxiety had lived for too long. That might not sound like much, but when you've been drowning in fear, peace is a miracle. For the first time in weeks, he didn't wake up with panic buzzing in his head. He wasn't fighting to control the day. He had surrendered, and the pressure to fix everything had left with it. That's the thing no one talks about. We pray for doors to open. We pray for money, for signs, for breakthroughs. But sometimes the first miracle isn't outside of you, it's inside. It's the moment your soul finally unclenches. The moment you stop being your own God and let someone bigger carry the weight. That's what happened to Jonathan. He had no idea if his life was going to change, but he was changing. And sometimes that's enough to get you through the next. Step in then, quietly, without drama. Things began to move. A call came in about a small opportunity, nothing major, but enough to feel like a spark. Then someone reached out to collaborate, then another call. He didn't jump to conclusions. He didn't assume the floodgates had opened, but it was like something had shifted in the atmosphere, as if heaven had been waiting for him to stop clenching his fists before it could place anything new in his hands. That's what surrender does. It makes room. It clears the space we filled with fear, control, and self-doubt. Doing more, he was doing less than somehow. That's when things began to flow. Not just in his career, but in his spirit. He felt more anchored, more connected. His prayers changed too. Instead of begging, he started thanking. Instead of panicking, he started trusting it wasn't about success anymore. It wasn't about being seen. Something deeper was happening, something stronger. His relationship with God wasn't based on results. It was based on rest, on trust, on quiet, daily surrender. He was no longer chasing his future like it was running away from him. He was walking with it. With each step, something new began to unfold. That, he says, is when the chosen came into the picture, a role he couldn't have imagined, a story bigger than his own. But by the time that door opened, he wasn't desperate anymore. He was ready, because surrender had done more than fix his circumstances, and it prepared his heart. Jonathan didn't chase the role of Jesus. He didn't audition with some master plan to become the face of a global phenomenon. He simply kept walking. Step at a time, one prayer at a time. And then something found him. It came in the form of a script. Nothing flashy, no promise of fame. Just a project called The Chosen, from a director named Dallas Jenkins, who wanted to tell the story of Jesus in a way that felt human and close. Jonathan had worked with Dallas before on a small project. No red carpets, no headlines, just creative, trust. And when the role was offered, he said yes. Not because he felt worthy, not because he was ready, but because the same voice he'd surrendered to said, "Walk through this door." He didn't expect what came next. The role demanded more than acting. It asked for his soul, pulled him into the quiet space between scripture and humanity. Him reflect on the weight of what he was portraying, not just a character, but the most loved, misunderstood, worshipped figure in all of history. And Jonathan, still raw from surrender, still rebuilding from the inside, found that he wasn't acting. He was praying with every breath on set. People asked him, "How do you prepare to play Jesus?" And his answer was simple. You don't perform. You'll empty yourself. You let go. You stay surrendered. Because if you try to carry it alone, you will break. It was that same surrender, the one that began on the floor of his apartment, that carried him through the role, day after day, scene after scene, wide open. What people saw on screen wasn't just a performance. It was a man who had already let go of his ego, a man who had already been broken and rebuilt. That's why it hit so deeply. That's why people cried watching him speak those lines. Because it didn't feel like acting. It felt like truth. And that truth came from surrender. Jonathan didn't transform himself into Jesus. He let Jesus transform him. And that shift, the shift from control to trust, from fear to faith, is what made the role powerful. It wasn't technique, wasn't talent alone. It was presence, divine presence. The kind that only enters when the door has been opened, wide enough by surrender. And here's what's wild. That one prayer, whispered in weakness and doubt, led to the greatest purpose of his life. A purpose that didn't just touch him, it began touching millions. Around the world, across every screen, because God doesn't need perfect people. He uses surrendered ones. It started with a single man on his knees, but it didn't end there. Because what Jonathan Roumie thought was just his breaking point became a breakthrough for millions. The beauty of surrender is that it never stays small. It ripples, quietly, powerfully. It moves through moments and lands in places you never expected. When Jonathan gave up control in that tiny apartment, he wasn't thinking about anyone else. He wasn't imagining fans, interviews, or global impact. He was just trying to breathe. But that one raw prayer started a chain reaction that would echo across the world. Once The Chosen began streaming, something unusual happened. People didn't just watch the show, they felt it. Something about Jonathan's presence in the role broke through the screen. It wasn't just the acting, it was the stillness, the peace behind the eyes, the calm that had come only after total surrender. People wrote in saying things like, "I felt closer to God watching this than I have in years." Or, "I don't know why I'm crying, but I feel seen." Or simply, "This changed me." And that's when Jonathan realized this wasn't just about him anymore. His personal prayer had cracked something open in others. It made space for their surrender, their healing, their hope. Because when you're brave enough to show your brokenness, you give other people permission to stop pretending to it. Wasn't always easy. The weight of being a symbol of playing Jesus was real. Some days, Jonathan felt that pressure creep. Back in, the old fear, the need to get it right. But every time he started to grip too tightly, he went back to that prayer, that moment, that surrender. Not once, not twice, but daily. Because surrender isn't a one-time event. It's a rhythm, a posture, a way of moving through life with open hands. And as The Chosen grew, so did the stories. Addicts finding freedom, families watching together for the first time, lonely people feeling seen, faith being reawakened in quiet living rooms and on late-night train rides with headphones in. And in the middle of it all was a man who once thought he had nothing left. A man who simply said, "God, I can't, but you can." That's the mystery of grace. It takes your smallest, most surrendered moment and multiplies it beyond anything you could plan. Jonathan's prayer didn't just change his life. It became a doorway for strangers he'll never meet, for souls who didn't even know they were looking for something more. And here's the most powerful part. The same can be true for you. You don't need to be an actor. You don't need a camera. You just need to stop pretending you're okay when you're not. You need to say the words you've been holding back, because sometimes the prayer you whisper in private becomes the healing someone else finds in public. We've been taught to push harder, to fight, to grind, to never let them see you fall, but no one tells you that real strength doesn't always look like standing tall. Sometimes real strength looks like falling to your knees. The world told Jonathan Roumie that success came from hustling, That if you just worked harder, prayed louder, networked better, you'd get there. And he tried. He gave it everything, until he was empty, till his hands were full of effort, but still holding nothing. That's when he discovered the truth most people never hear until they break. You don't climb your way into peace. You surrender your way into it. People think surrender means giving up. It doesn't. Surrender means giving over. It means saying, God, I trust you more than I trust my own plans. It means releasing your grip on what's killing your joy. And that kind of surrender, it's the bravest thing you can do, because it takes courage to let go. It takes faith to say, I'm not in control. It takes strength to stop pretending you're fine when you're crumbling. Inside Jonathan lives this now, not as a man who has it all figured out, but as someone who knows where to turn when he doesn't. He talks about surrender like it's a lifeline, not a last resort. The more he lets go, the more peace he finds. Not perfect peace, not problem-free days, but a kind of stillness you carry with you no matter what the day throws at you. And surrender isn't just for actors. It's for mothers barely holding it together. It's for students buried under pressure. It's for business owners, caregivers, creatives, skeptics. It's for the tired, the lost, the angry, the ones still praying for something to change. You don't have to have perfect faith. You don't need big words. You just need to be honest, say it out loud, or whisper it through tears. Write it down if your voice is gone. God, I don't have the answers, but I trust that you do. I give you this pain, give you this fear. I give you everything I've been, trying to carry on my own. I surrender. That's not weakness. That's strength most people never tap into. Kind of strength that carries you when your own legs can't. The kind of strength Jonathan found. Not in a breakthrough moment, but in the quiet after, in the stillness of release, in the slow rebuilding of a heart that stopped running. If you've been holding it all together for too long, maybe this is your moment. Not to break down, but to lay it down. To surrender not because you're weak, but because you're ready to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Jonathan Roumie's story didn't begin with fame. It began with surrender. It's not the kind that's polished or planned. The kind that happens in a quiet room when no one is watching. The kind that sounds like, God, I don't know what else to do. And now it's your turn. You don't need to hit rock bottom first. You don't need to wait until everything falls apart. The invitation is open now, not from Jonathan, not from a video, from something deeper. From the same quiet voice that met him on his knees. The voice that sees you exactly where you are, without judgment, without pressure. Just love, because maybe you've been trying too hard to hold it all together. Maybe you've been carrying something you were never meant to carry alone. Maybe. Your mind is exhausted, your heart is heavy, and your soul is just tired. If that's you, pause for a moment, not to fix it.
Not to figure it out.
Just pause long enough to breathe and whisper the truth. I can't do this alone. I surrender. You don't need to say it perfectly. You don't need to feel spiritual. You just need to be willing to stop holding on so tight. That's how Jonathan's life began to change. Not with a strategy, not with a step-by-step plan, but with one moment of letting go on to know everything didn't turn around instantly. But peace showed up before answers did. Joy returned before the job offer. Healing started before anything looked different on the outside. Because surrender doesn't just change your situation, it changes you. So here's the invitation. Just for today, what if you tried it? Not a performance. It's not a show. Just a prayer. Quiet. Simple, honest God. I'm tired. I've been trying to do this on my own, and I can't anymore. I don't have the answers. I don't know what's next. But I trust you do. So I let go. I give you everything. I surrender. You don't have to feel something right away. Just say it. And watch what happens over time. Watch how peace begins to grow in places where fear once lived. Watch how strength comes not from doing more, but from trusting more. Jonathan Roumie's life was transformed by that prayer. Yours can be too if this spoke to you. Don't keep it to yourself. Type I surrender in the comments if you're ready to let go and share this with someone who might be right where Jonathan once was, on the edge of breaking, one prayer away from peace.